Yo, check this out. This is Wayne Wonder, representing for Warieka LTV. You see the vision, don't it? See the vision. Warieka LTV. Keep it locked.
No, I'm gonna tell you. We as bloggers, these are the issues that we need to address. You understand what I said? You see? Set the path for the youth. Share, like, and subscribe and stay tuned to the channel. I don't know all this shit. Yes, And I say, greeting once again in the name of God. Almighty King Selassie, I guide, I trod. Yes, Sound up there bang, you know? Don't know. Once enough respect to all viewers and subscribers. Once greetings in the mighty name of His Imperial Majesties. And I want to ask subscriber them when I subscribe. I mean, the viewers them when I subscribe, yeah? You like the content, subscribe and help grow the tree, you know? Yes, So we are going to continue with some more reading as requested from the book Born for Dead. You see it? Yeah. The book soon done too, you know? So it just fitting, you know? For jump in. The party name Sesame Street. Or Sesame Street. Yeah, Sesame Street. Saying, so we read from the chapter named Sesame Street. We don't know what that means, but we are going to jump in it, you know, see. Yes, saying, yeah. So, a few months after our first encounter, Shenda got her marching orders from her boyfriend's mother. The elderly woman had put up with Shenda until her crack habit got in the way, making her volatile and quick to pick a fight. So she started living in her boyfriend's car, a late model sedan with plush blue velvet upholstery and a spiderweb crack in the windshield. Shenda packed her own heat, a 9mm, and I thought that she had made the hole with a bullet. And I thought that she had made the hole with a bullet until she told me she'd put it there with a high-heeled shoes during a fight with her boyfriend. She parked the car on Rogers Avenue, which she called Sesame Street, for the unpredictable theatrics of its inhabitants. Some of the cast living are hung out in a crack house across the street from Delroy's old base, and Shenda had nicknamed it the Pauper's Graveyard. It did seem like the end of the line, but she always considered herself superior to the graveyard crew because of her West Indian background and her university education. She thought of her crack smoking as a detour, never a destination, a temporary indulgence that would pass like a fever once she was ready to give it up. Too much ambition plus not enough education equals disaster was her formula for explaining Sesame Street. The Pauper's Graveyard became her base in the bitter winter that followed Delroy's trial. She slept there sometimes and stayed inside during the day to smoke and be warm. The crack house was a 4-story brownstone that had once belonged to a prosperous woman from the south who earned her living as a music teacher. She had long since gone into a nursing home, and her grandson had turned this formerly genteel resident into a derelict shell inhabited by a floating array of squatters. But relics of the music teacher's occupancy was everywhere in the graveyard. Ornamental woodwork that was warped now with cold and damp, and 2 battered pianos that still stood in the upstairs front room. Shenda had taken music lessons as a child in Jamaica, and when she was inspired, she played snatches of Mozart and Beethoven and the baby grand. Sometime a squatter named Jed interrupted her to cook his crack on top of the piano. Jed lived in one of the upstairs rooms and earned a few dollars by renting it out to girls who gave blowjobs for a smoke. But Shenda and I hung out in the garden apartment downstairs. It belonged to a couple, Natalie and Sinclair, who marshaled the graveyard troop into something that resembled a family. Natalie was a spectral presence, rare, thin, and hollow-eyed, and she coughed all winter long from pneumonia. She spent most of her days in bed, tucked under a faded red satin coverlet that gleamed against the dark grey walls of the room. Shenda used to call her the den mother. To augment Natalie's welfare checks, Sinclair brought in a little money by fixing electrical appliances for people in the neighborhood. He had wired their apartment with a bandulu hook up to a light post outside, and it was the only part of the building that had electricity. There was no plumbing either, so everyone relieved themselves in plastic buckets that Natalie kept in a curtained alcove off the bedroom. The back of the graveyard faced a courtyard behind the Lutheran church around the corner, and sometimes the buckets were emptied there. The bedroom was warmed by a single heater, and on cold days, the place was a refuge for dealers who came in to get warm and smokers who needed a place to get high. If you call this street by its real name in the book, Shenda said on a very cold afternoon while sharing some crack with Natalie, the cops are going to shut the whole place down. But she was only joking. We all thought the outside world was past caring what happened on Sesame Street. 10 or 12 smokers were gathered in the graveyard that day, huddled around the heater and an elegant old coffee table, topped with smoked blue glass that had been left behind by the music teacher. They were cooking their own crack in small vials of water and baking soda. Looking up every now and then to watch the color television that was turned to America's Most Wanted, an afternoon favorite in the basement. The Jamaican posse often turned up on that show, and someone joked that its title referred to us all. Suddenly, the wooden door to the hallway outside began pounding, and we heard shouts of, "Open up!" Everyone froze. I looked at Natalie on the bed, and she gestured for me to open one of the sliding wood panels. They were badly warped. So I had to get down on my knees and push from the bottom. I looked up from the floor into a slit of light from the hallway and the barrel of a gun. The three cops crashed into the room and held us all at gunpoint. They were undercovers, just in acid wash jeans and grubby sweatshirts, but the bulletproof vest gave them away. They took in the scene and spied the little piles of cracks on the blue glass table. One of them sighed. "Okay," he said, "we're not looking for drugs. We heard you're stashing guns here." Everyone laughed and eased their bodies down into slouches as the cops tore Natalie's bed apart and ripped the cushions from the couch. No guns. They seemed relieved but chagrined and backed out the door, mumbling threats about coming back. The crackheads were lighting their glass stems before the cops were even out on the street. "We get the message loud and clear," Shenda shouted into the empty hallway. "You see that? These are all just black people smoking and blowing their fucking minds. No guns, no gun people here. So we niggers can just go on smoking ourselves to death." She waved her stem in the air as if she wanted someone in the world to take it away from her. The police raid united Shenda and me in a kind of conspiratorial bond. Our friendship deepened after that afternoon, and soon she began confiding the story of her life. It came forth in shards of memory through months and final years, as I learned to understand her as someone who specialized in the loss of things that was irretrievable: love, family, and homeland. We had our best talks in Shenda's car, cruising around Crown Heights. We were sitting in the front seat on a raw, rainy day, parked in front of a takeout place with boxes of food in our laps, when she told me about losing her virginity to the only man she had ever loved. We were childhood sweethearts. Robert and I, Shenda began, almost in a whisper. I never wanted anyone else. I can still remember the first day he touched me. It was sometimes. She can still remember the first day he touched her. It was summertime and nobody was at our house but them. And he just said, "Today we are going to do this." And they did. She went to the university in Kingston and got a degree in English literature. When she and Robert married, Shenda began teaching at a private school in Hanover. Those were her ripest years. Her son was born in 1977, and it seemed like his birth meshed with the promises that Jamaica held in the mid-70s. We had a country that wanted some serious attention, Shenda said. God, I was idealistic then. I was going so good. I was 22 years old. I had a house. I had an education. I had a husband and a son. And Robert and I had 4 years together. We had 4 beautiful, wonderful, fantastic, unimaginably dreamlike years together. It was a hell of a thing when he died. He was in a road accident that killed everyone in the car but Robert, who survived with serious injuries. He loved soccer and refused to obey his doctor's order not to play while he was recovering. One afternoon, he was at the field near their house when a ball went out of bounds and he couldn't resist kicking it back in. His spleen ruptured and he died in the hospital in Montego Bay. Shenda was pregnant with twin daughters when Robert died. You know, I talk it now, and it's only when I remember the poems I wrote after he died that my pain started to sting again. It smarts, but it does not burn. I've learned to resolve myself to the pain, but I never got over it, really. It's affected my entire life. She recited a passage from one of the poems, and I quote, "I'm going to smash up the schoolhouse where he would play. I'm going to pray God bring down fire and hail. I'm going to take out the bomb, destroy the world. I'm going to sit in the kitchen under the shelf and cry a little and die a little, all by myself." You know, yeah. We ate our jerk chicken and looked out at the rain peeling down the windshield. I think a lot of my problem stems from his death. I became bitter about life, saw that it don't have nothing to offer. So what am I trying for? And you know me. And you know me with my words. I was trashing out at everyone. I was cursing God and they tried to stop me from doing that. My mother especially. She said, "Never question God's goodness. There's a reason in everything." But I said, "Reason? Where could you find a reason in this? I got 2 babies in my belly and a son who's barely 4 months old. Where is the reason?" So I said, if he's got a reason for this, I don't want to hear it from nobody else. I want him to come, put himself in some form as I can hear it hear it live and direct from the source. And if he don't come, I will tell you that, Shenda, people like Uno is disgusting. Cause your man crash and everybody else in the car dead and him live. See? And go against the doctor warning. And you there, cause God, you just love crack. You just love attention. People like you. You see, there's a look of reason for go off the rails. Yes, I. But I come bad about God wicked and God. Nothing is sure as birth like death. As sure as birth is, so is death. Me bend on me read all the part there. You know see, I kind of dopey back this man. You know see. Anyway, I'm continuing. Shenda stayed with her mother until the twins were born, but she had lost the will to walk good. She stopped teaching and drifted over to Negril, where her genteel manner stood out in the crowd. Soon she was meeting Americans who wanted to smuggle ganja, and she cut herself in on their deals by hooking them up with growers. Cocaine was already trickling into the sleepy little town, and Shenda met two coke-running American women. One lived in New York with trust funds upon trust funds, and she introduced Shenda to a wealthy businessman from New Jersey who paid her way up to New York in 1981. She lived with him for only a few weeks before she moved to Brooklyn and briefly shared a place with the trust-funded cokehead. Shenda's stories about this woman were laced with wild humor. Her mother lived at the Dakota, the landmark apartment building on Central Park West, and they used to have long conversation every morning about what to wear. Should I do the red dress with the gray shoes, Shenda tried, or the white one with the beige shoes? I am sitting there listening to this, wondering where on earth I was, and all I could think about was my kids. God, I just wanted to hug my kids. She found jobs as a temporary office worker and stayed with them for a couple of years until she started to smoke cocaine, and the rest is history, Shenda said with a bitter laugh. I admire Shenda for her unapologetic anger at life's indifference, at the way it can deal blows from which some people don't recover. She had no self-pity about her own current predicament. She had chosen this life, and she never doubted that her strength would one day pull her out of it. When the spring came, we left her car parked in front of the Pauper's graveyard and walked around Crown Heights, ducking into reggae record shops on Nostrand Avenue to check out the cases full of Ethiopian paraphernalia, and stopping at the Korean greengrocers to buy clusters of lime green guineps, which we sucked on as we strolled. Vendors on the corner of Eastern Parkway sold jelly coconuts and tamarind balls rolled in sugar, tall stalks of cane, and sliced pineapple in plastic bags, which made Shenda homesick. Our route took us by a tiny store where Rastafari sold goatskin drums and huge leather crowns, big enough to stack dreadlocks underneath. You see this spot? Shenda asked. Well, it used to be a restaurant. The woman who ran it was named Maggie, and she was my best friend. Everyone on the street knows Maggie's story. She came from Kingston and did fine for the longest time, running this cook shop, until some dealer showed Maggie about cocaine. She fell in love with him and let him stash the stuff at her place, and soon she started dipping into it. Well, you know how when you eat one slice of cake and then another and then another, and pretty soon you figure you might as well just nyam up the whole damn thing. So it went. Maggie went through 7 ounces of this guy's coke, and when he came back, he just tied her hands behind her back, stuffed her into a plastic garbage bag, and threw her off the roof. Shenda passed to wonder whether Maggie could have survived that fall. If he had thrown her free-handed, maybe she wouldn't have died. could have just broken her bones. But if your hands are tied behind you and you're in a bag, you don't see how far you have to go to the ground. Plus the fear. When you're in a bag, you're disoriented. It's like you're going up a down staircase. Wow. That was almost 4 years ago. But I still see Maggie's face sometimes like it was yesterday. I remember her. All fat and shiny eyes, sweaty and singing in a restaurant. She was my best friend. I hope that boy is still there in prison. Not for that, but all Babylon for just forgot him. Yes, Rasta. Fuck with that, man. There were so many deaths in the neighborhood that every street corner carried the memory of a shooting. On our way back to the Pauper's graveyard, we passed a corner adorned by a mural with the names of young men and women who had died there. Some of the names were accompanied by dates and faces, surrounded by flickering candles, rainbows, and doves. There was a killing that spring on Rogers Avenue. One of the Jamaicans in front of Delroy's store shot an African-American dealer who had intruded on their turf. Just before we heard the shot, Shenda had opened the graveyard's iron gate to one of the Jamaicans from the corner. His name was Luke, and he had sensed trouble and was getting off the streets. We stayed in Natalie's room until long after dark, when the police had left and the coroner's van had picked up the body. Luke was philosophical about the slaying. He had been a soldier in Jamaica Defense Force in the late 1970s and had seen seen so much shooting in his Kingston neighborhood that nothing in Brooklyn fazed him. We're all here to find a living, he said. Every man must eat bread, but is rough out there all the same. Luke's military training gave him disdain for the posse shootists who sprayed bystanders with gunfire. He liked to think that if the need ever arose, he would have the skill to kill whomever he was after and leave the innocent out of it. The first story he ever told me about the political warfare he had experienced in Kingston involved the shooting of an innocent man. It was 1977, right before the Green Bay killing. My brother was a JLP caretaker for our area, and he had this pair of green ballet shoes that he loved, that was the party's color. But he was the only one in the area who had such fine slippers. There was a guy named Clinton who was getting into all kinds of trouble, breaking into houses and robbing people. So my brother stopped him from doing that and told him he would help him look for work. Clinton asked to borrow my brother's ballet. A squad car full of PNP police was just rounding the corner when Clinton walked from his yard. The cops saw him in the green shoes and took him for Luke's brother, the JLP activists they were after. They shot Clinton dead. I ran down to the corner and there is this cop from the eradication squad standing over the body and shouting, "Who him is? Who him is?" So I say, you kill the fucking man and you have to turn around and ask who him is, and he don't do nothing to you. Luke saw more than his share of such killings. You don't have to do anything for the cops in Jamaica to kill you, he said. I saw a friend of mine from Rima die one night. The cop shot him, but he didn't die right away. So they threw him in the car trunk, and he knew they were gonna take him to some other place, finish him off. So he was shouting, "Don't let them put me in the trunk. Don't let them put me in the trunk, cause I don't die yet." But they carried him off, and then everybody started to run from police station to police station, from hospital to hospital, and we didn't find nobody until the morning came and we heard that he had died. Luke went into a downtown club a few weeks later and found the same policeman drinking there. He was about to throw a firebomb into the place when a friend dragged him away. So many things like those, it's hard for our people to forget. And even if 5 or 10 years go by and the person who did that killing is not dead, you must do something, because every time you see him, you remember your friend or your brother or whoever it was they killed. It keeps riding you until you got to do something. I saw Luke often after that day. Whenever I went to check Brambles at his spot at our Shenda at the graveyard, Luke would be selling his crack in the stairwell door next door to Delroy's old place. One night, a little party of us went down to a posse bar called The Bucket to eat the spicy boiled lobster that the chef there cooked every Tuesday. Brambles and Shenda were in high spirits, warmed by white rum and music. But Luke was under a cloud. He owed his supplier $2,000 and was worried that he might run into him at the Buckets. Luke's man did catch up with him a few weeks later. It was closing time at a bar where Luke was having a nightcap with Jerry, the owner. After he locked up for the night, the two men walked down the street to where Jerry's car was parked. Jerry saw a black sedan idling by the corner, and he heard the 5 shots just after he called good night to Luke. Shenda called me the next day. I waited with the crowd around his body until the cops came, she said. They knew Luke anyway. They had been watching him for a long time. But it was terrible to see the way they just dumped him so unceremoniously into the coroner's van. 2 of them took each leg and dragged him like a dog. I hadn't listened yet to the last tape I had made with Luke that night at the Buckets. I transcribed it after Shenda's call, hearing the voice of a ghost. I'm not thinking about getting down up here and selling drugs for the rest of my life. I try to get legal jobs, but I don't succeed. And I have a woman and a baby to take care of down in Kingston. Someday I'm going home. A few days later, Shenda and I were sitting on the front steps of the graveyard, turning our faces greedily up into the spring sunlight. We were both thinking about Luke, glancing down and then at the empty stairwell across the street where he used to stand. Shenda spoke some lines from John Milton's Lycidas, a poem she'd memorized as a schoolgirl. In memoriam of Luke, she said, I can see him over there. I can't believe he's dead. Oh, God. It's a long road. It's a long road to where we are now. Yes, you see, yeah. So, that at the end of the Sesame Street chapter, you get what I say? The next chapter is Bones and the Gully. See? And we are coming up to the closing now. See? So Bones and the Gully, and then Reprise. You see? And then Requiem for Trevor in memorial, Trevor Phillips, 1948 to 1997. See? Now, I want to squeeze up them 3 in a 1 on the next reading. You see, which is soon, very soon. See? So, and I give thanks once again. See? And please remember, share, like, and subscribe so you know help grow the thing. And I give thanks. Reading from the book, Born for Dead by Laurie Guns. See? Enough respect.